Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. I am your host, Mary Fran Bontempo. Today, I have with me Andrea Wilson Woods, who has a story that moves me, gutted me, just all of the things. And I'm delighted to have her with me today. Andrea is a keynote speaker, award-winning writer who loves to tell stories. She is a patient advocate and founder of the nonprofit Blue Faery, the Adrienne Wilson Liver Cancer Association. Former professor with a best-selling book, Better Off Bald, A Life in 147 Days. Andrea, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Mary Fran.
I have to tell you, I saw your story, and again was gutted. Started reading it and thought, how did you do all of these things? So, catch everybody else up as to where this kind of started for you, and then we'll get into the gutting part.
Well, I
Stay
want
tuned,
to, I want,
people. You really want to hear this story. Stay tuned. It's really an interesting story.
well, I do want to say today is a very special day. It's actually at the time of this recording, because I know this will go out later. It's actually the 24th anniversary, not a word I like, but the only word that's appropriate, of my sister's death.
Oh my
20
gosh.
24 years. So
I had no idea of that. And
yeah.
I would tend to imagine that no matter how many years go by, that a day like this just brings everything right back to you.
Yeah, it really does. So let's start there. So why is that so important? Um, in December of 1994, I was living in Los Angeles. I had graduated from USC early, and my life was kind of a hot mess. And my 8-year-old sister came to visit me for what was supposed to be a 2-week Christmas vacation. And we have the same mother, but different fathers. Her father died, unfortunately, in a car accident before she was born, so she never knew him. And our mother really struggled after I left home, and her life just spiraled downhill in that year in 1994. So she was a prescription drug addict and a nurse, and she ended up losing her nursing license because she got caught shooting up morphine at work.
Oh my God.
And, she'd always been very high functioning when I was a kid and when I was in high school and always able to maintain a job. But of course, losing her nursing license, that was it. She refused to admit that she had a problem. She refused to go to rehab, even though it's very common for doctors and nurses to have addiction issues. And and yeah, her life was falling apart. So my sister comes out again. I think it's for a 2-week Christmas vacation, although she had 2 suitcases, and the second one was full of her stuffed animals. So that should have been a clue
Oh my
that my
goodness.
mother had other plans. And our mother called the day after Christmas and said she didn't want to be a mother anymore. And I could just see what had happened. I mean, just seeing how my sister's appearance even looked. And she wasn't being taken care of. And I just told our mother that if I took her that Christmas, I wasn't going to give her back. And that's what happened. So I got physical custody immediately, and I'm 22, my sister's 8. And then later I sued for full legal custody and won.
You were 22 years old.
Yeah,
I
it's 22.
I think of 22-year-olds nowadays, having raised 3 kids myself and everything, and the idea of any 22-year-old that I know raising an 8-year-old is all but beyond comprehension, especially when you're at that point where you're still trying to figure out your own life.
Yeah.
So, first of all, kudos to your younger self for taking this on. just seeing something that was needed to be done and really not, there really wasn't much of a choice for you in that point, but without any awareness, I'm sure, of the full ramifications of that decision.
No, I was blissfully naive. I had no idea how difficult it was going to be. But I love Adrienne unconditionally, and I use the present tense because I still do. I've never loved anyone the way that I love her. And I was very much in her life the first 4 years of her life. I mean, I was there the day she was born. I was actually the first person to hold her
Mm.
because our mother had a C-section. And so we were very close, despite the fact that I went across the country to college. And so yeah, I mean, it didn't occur to me to say no. And there wasn't anybody else. There were no other options.
So you're taking care of an 8-year-old, trying to figure out your own life. And I mean, with all of the challenges that that encompasses. But then I did read that as she became a little bit older, she had some serious anxiety and depression issues. And that's, I mean, that's just generally difficult. The teenage years compound it, certainly.
Yes, they do.
And then pick up the story from there, where you're at with her, with that age.
She was 12 and I used to teach middle school and I used to tell my 12-year-old students like that's like the worst year of my childhood personally, which didn't make them feel better. But I was like my he's like you'll get over it, I promise.
Yeah.
But she was struggling in middle school socially and trying to fit in and there were signs. There were just little things and just from the clothes she was wearing that didn't seem like her, or the music she was listening to she didn't seem like she was being just herself, and she was trying so hard to fit in. And what ultimately happened was I had asked her to clean her room for the upteenth time. She was a massive slob, and I finally said, if you don't clean your room by X date, I'm going to go in and I'm going to clean from top to bottom because I'm tired of looking at it. And so, of course, she didn't clean her room. And I went through and started cleaning her room, and I found a suicide note.
Oh,
And this was the summer of 1998, so she was 12.
ugh.
And it was very methodical. It wasn't just, it was very, it was kind of like a last will and testament. Like when I'm going to commit suicide on this day. When I die, the following possessions go to the following people. I mean, it was very scary. I was terrified.
Oh my gosh.
And I immediately called my boyfriend, who at that point had become a real father figure to her and the only father figure she ever had. And in fact, he had a younger son, and they were much closer in age than me and my sister were. So they were like siblings. But I called him at work, and at first he thought I was overreacting. I was like, no, let me read this whole thing to you. And he said, okay, I'll be right home. We were sitting at the kitchen table waiting for her to come home from school. And so she walked in the door and she knew something was wrong because she never came home from school and we're both sitting there. And I don't know why I was off work that day, but I was, and but he would never be home. And she reacted, I think, like any 12-year-old would. She, accused me of violating her privacy and, all kinds of things. And then she finally just broke down and admitted how depressed she was and how sad she was that her mother abandoned her, that she never knew her father, that it was really deep. And I got on the phone, I just started calling, and we were so fortunate. And I do feel like now it was some sort of divine intervention because we found a therapy group that was willing to take her on, even though at that point I didn't have full legal custody. Had the physical, but I was still in the process of suing for full legal custody. And then, this never happens with anyone else I know, but she got matched with the perfect therapist.
Oh, that's
Shout out to Denise. Still friends with Denise to this day. And she started seeing Denise every week. And it was a long, long journey, but about a year and a half in, Denise said, she's better and she's not suicidal. Um, the depression's still there, but she's much better than she was. And I asked Adrienne if she wanted to continue seeing Denise, and she's like, "Oh yeah." And she called her psycho doctor. And she's like, yeah, I'll keep seeing my psycho doctor. And I knew there were things she could tell Denise that she couldn't tell me.
Right.
And so I mean, Denise was there when Adrienne died. I mean, that's how special a woman
Oh,
she is.
oh my gosh. So again, I think that rings very true to a lot of people right now who are dealing with adolescence and just in a world that seems to be constantly turned on its head. And every time you feel like you have a little bit of equilibrium, the rug gets pulled out again. And it's very real. I mean, you think of 12-year-olds and that you just don't think that should enter their consciousness. But it's so important to, I hate to say to invade their privacy, but yeah, I mean at that point
Sometimes you
you
have to.
you do you have to you have to break the rules.
Yep.
And I mean,
Yep.
you certainly started breaking the rules when you took your sister on at age 22, but that was by no means the end of this saga. So you had your sister, she has her therapist. Thank God for therapists. I am a huge proponent. Just went back to therapy myself, like yay therapy. But things didn't get better. They kind of got a lot worse at one point. So catch us up to that.
Yeah, so things did get better when she started high school. They actually did. She started her first year of high school in 2000. And I think that was nice because in middle school, everybody she met, they had known each other since kindergarten.
Ah.
And we moved to a new school district for middle school because I wanted to get her into a good, safe school district and get her out of LA Unified. But in high school, it was different, I think, between therapy, between having a lot of other people around her, like my friends who were kind of like her aunts and uncles who just loved her exactly the way she was. By the time she got to high school, she just threw everybody's expectations out the window and just started being herself. And it was so amazing to watch, like to see her blossom. And she'd always been a good student, but I mean, she was a, 4.0 GPA, honor student, but could hang out with anybody. And I think she started to realize that like she didn't have to belong to one clique or another. She met a really nice young man who went to the only other high school in Burbank, and he was her boyfriend, and he just adored her. And so that first year of high school was incredible for
She was
her.
wildly creative, which it seems like it
Yes,
blossomed at that point. She, when, as you said, she really started to come into her own. It looks
she
like
did.
she really, went into that world of creating and just letting herself express herself.
Yeah, she had always been an artist and from a very young age, but she and started writing in journals when she was 10, but then she really got serious about writing and art. And yeah, she was amazing. She was yeah, like you said, very creative and she couldn't sing, but she loved music. Nobody in my family can sing. We did not inherit that trait, and yes, we can't. But she loved music, and she was learning to play the jazz bass. So she was
Oh my
very
gosh, that's
excited
amazing.
about that. And then 3 weeks before high school was out, I came home from work and found her on the living room floor, curled up in a fetal position clutching her right side, saying she couldn't breathe. And she was crying, and this was a kid who didn't cry. Literally the day before she had been fine. And and so we went to her pediatrician and he didn't like what he saw. He sent us to the only hospital in Burbank, right down the street from us, and they said they were going to run a CAT scan. And I mean, it was happening so fast. It was like, okay, whatever you need to do, let's find out why she's in pain. And as she was, to give you a sense of her sense of humor, as she's being wheeled in for the CAT scan, she said, "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I was like, oh, bite
Mm.
your tongue. And I laughed and she laughed. I mean, that was just her wit. And so she gets the CAT scan. We're waiting for the results. At this point, it's still just the two of us. We've let John know, the father figure, my boyfriend, but he wasn't at the hospital yet. We let Denise know because it was Wednesday and she was supposed to see Denise that night, her therapist. We let Denise know, but we didn't know anything yet, except we're in the ER. And it was the ER doctor who came in after that CAT scan and said she has tumors in her liver and lungs.
Oh my God. I can't
And wouldn't even look at her, wouldn't say her name. And he even seemed stunned.
take
I
it.
mean, he
Oh,
he he seemed just so beyond shocked. And then he tells us, well, we're not equipped to handle the situation because that hospital only saw adult patients or neonatal. So they had already arranged for an ambulance for us to go to Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which was right over the hill.
your
And we
head
were,
must have just been,
oh yeah, yeah.
it must have been like almost an out of body experience at that point, just watching this happen around you and yet being a major player in it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we both burst into tears at the same time. He walked out, and then I'm still crying, and Adrienne had stopped, and she said, "I was just joking." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I was just joking when I said watch it be cancer." And then we both started laughing again. We just started laughing. And 2 days later, a biopsy confirmed that she had stage 4 hepatocellular carcinoma, which is primary liver cancer. So it had already spread to her lungs.
Oh my
And
God. And
we had no idea.
was she was she that stoic that she probably had been experiencing pain or symptoms or whatever and just didn't say anything, or it was
N-
really she just had no idea.
No, she was stoic, but no, liver cancer is very sneaky because
Hmm.
our livers don't have pain receptors.
Oh,
So
I had
if
no idea about that.
Yeah. So most of the time when liver cancer is caught, it's because either one, the person knew they had an underlying liver disease, and so they were getting routinely scanned. So under surveillance is what they call it. Or just like Adrienne, something else had happened to finally cause pain. So what had happened is her liver had gotten so swollen, it was pushing her diaphragm. And that's why she was saying she literally could not breathe
Agreed.
because of the pressure on her diaphragm. And the only other symptoms she had some acid reflux. And I mean, she was kind of chewing Tums like they were Tic Tacs. And, as a parent, you can control what your child eats in your home, but you can't control what they eat outside your home. And,
Right. And it's
and
tacos and pizza and junk.
exactly. And I said, that's what I said. Stop eating tacos at school. Like just stop. And that only been going on like 2 months. And then the only other symptom she had, and I'm always cautious when I say this because I don't want to scare people. Exactly 2 weeks before, she had right shoulder pain, and we had gone to our pediatrician, and he thought she had just pulled something because her PE credit was dance. So she was in dance class every single day, very active and getting ready to audition for next year's dance team. And so even more active than usual. And so he just, prescribed some ibuprofen and sent us home. Well, right shoulder pain can be a sign of advanced liver cancer because there's a nerve that goes from our liver all the way up to our right shoulder,
Oh
and
my,
it's called referred pain. So those were her two symptoms. That's it.
oh my gosh, that is, well, it's terrifying when you think about it in any case, but in a 15-year-old girl, how do you even begin to comprehend that? I mean, we talk about resilience here. I, I don't even know how you would begin to absorb that, let alone formulate some kind of a how are we going to get through this plan.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what, I mean, obviously, those first, well, I was going to say those first few days, but the first, I don't know how long, must have been, your heads just must have been spinning around. Where did you even start to navigate this and to help a 15-year-old who's got enough worries with boys and dance class and all that kind of stuff to navigate something that obviously did end her life, but at that moment she would know quite possibly could.
I think it helped that our mother was a nurse. So I grew up around doctors and hospitals. So even though the terminology they were throwing at me about this type of cancer was new, I was not scared to ask questions. And then when I don't get the answers that I want or don't understand those answers, I do research. So within days, I had a medical dictionary, which is over 2 inches thick. I had a Grey's Anatomy, the book, not the TV show,
Yes, so
and
literally, the
which
book
is
came
also like,
first. The book
yes, yes, the book has been around forever. And so I had those like within days,
Uh-huh.
and started researching, and then when they started giving me these one sheets on the chemotherapy they were giving her, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. This is the chemotherapy. These are the side effects. Fine. I need to understand this disease first. And there was nothing at that time. There was nothing. And the doctor who did her biopsy, the surgeon, said, I'm going to make copies from my medical textbooks. So that's what he did. Bless him. He made copies
Oh,
from
man.
his medical textbooks. I mean, gave me just a stack of paper. And I think that's what prompted the buying of the medical dictionary, especially. And so I'm going through this and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I have a degree, but science, I was never good at science, and I feel like I'm reading a foreign language. This is crazy. And that really stuck with me that there was nothing in layman's terms that was easy to understand. And actually the pediatric oncologist, who we called Dr. No, we ended up firing him and getting a new one. And you can fire your doctors, people. And he didn't explain it either. So he didn't explain it in layman's terms at all. And so it was really just sitting there with this dictionary and going line by line and getting a better understanding of what was really going on.
So, well, I don't know even know where to begin this, but okay, so let's just jump ahead a little bit because
Sure.
I'm looking at Blue Fairy and I know that you, through this process, became an advocate for people with liver cancer. And again, we're skipping a huge part of the story that we will come back to, but that I have found is one of the things with people who have been through trauma and challenges that you take that, you can't control the outcome, you can't control the circumstances. But one of the things that you can do is use that experience for good, for something that comes, you don't want to be there. I always go, when people always say, oh, well, it was a blessing. No, no, it's not a blessing. It was never a blessing. It was a horror show. It sucked. It was terrible. Nothing good about it. But you can't live in that space mentally.
Right.
So is that kind of how you start? First of all, Blue Fairy. I go to Pinocchio. I don't know if that was the Blue Fairy that you're referencing, but the fairy in
No.
Pinocchio is the Blue Fairy. So tell us about
Yes.
Blue Fairy.
A year after Adrian's death, that the first year I was pretending. It's best acting of my life by far. I didn't want other people to worry about me, and and everybody else was moving on with their lives, and so I was really pretending. And then we hit that first anniversary and I fell apart and I was extremely suicidal. I had the perfect plan. I had it mapped out, and John and I were still together but kind of hanging on by a thread. And because he went into anger, I went into depression. And he is the one, to his credit, who said, I know you're thinking about suicide. I had not said that out loud at all to him or anyone. And he said, I know you're thinking about suicide, and if you do that, Adrienne will never forgive you,
Oh,
and you need to live your life. She would want that for you. And he was right. But I just had to find a way to channel my grief. So my thought was I'm going to volunteer for the largest liver disease nonprofit in the US, and I'm going to help them out because my background is writing, marketing, and teaching, and they didn't have anything about liver cancer on their website. So I was like, I am going to help them and volunteer, etc. Well, I went through many layers and got to the top people, and they said no, like flat out, no, absolutely not. We're not interested. We don't want to deal with liver cancer, blah, blah, blah. Which I did find out later it was an edict within the organization. They did not want to talk about liver cancer. And
gosh.
so I did more research, and there was not a single nonprofit dedicated to primary liver cancer in the US. And Lily Tomlin has been attributed with this great quote that says, I thought somebody should do something about that. And then I realized that somebody was me. And that's what happened. So I just took all this grief I had and channeled it into starting Blue Fairy.
And this is the organization that supports, gives information, all of those things that you so desperately needed
Yeah,
at the time. And
yeah,
that's unfortunately that's how it works a lot of times. The people who have to claw their way through these experiences end up, thankfully, being the ones to go, I don't want anybody else to do that. I don't want
right.
anybody else to experience that. People in those times need information, right? Is that where you start with information?
Yeah, that's Blue Fairy's mission is to prevent, treat, and cure primary liver cancer, specifically hepatocellular carcinoma, through research, education, and advocacy. And we started with education because my mind went right back to being in that hospital room and trying to translate from a medical, medical textbooks. And so we've done education from day one. In total layman's terms, we ship now we have patient resource guides that are about 16 pages. They're in English, Spanish, and Chinese. We ship worldwide for free. And since we partnered with this other company that has amazing distribution channels, just in the last 5 years, over 110,000 guides have been distributed. And these are by request. So it's not like they go out en masse. These are cancer treatment centers and hospitals and oncology offices and individuals and advocacy groups requesting the guides.
That is amazing. I mean, that we, as I said, we kind of jumped ahead to the end of the story, but you recognize your brilliance within challenges, and clearly your brilliance, again, all because of your skill set and your transferable skills and all to be able to create this organization to help people in need. Those things sometimes, as much as you hate that they fall into your lap, they fall into your lap, and you've
Right.
done something about it, and not everybody can do that. So certainly kudos to you for that and for that information because I can't imagine there's anything worse than being alone with someone who's ill in an emergency situation and just having no knowledge and
Yeah.
nobody telling you anything. And if they are telling you things, you can't understand it.
Yeah, or doctors speak in euphemisms. So her pediatric Dr. No, the one we fired, his way of telling us that there were no treatments. Actually, he should have just said that. There were actually no real treatments at the time, but his way of telling us she was dying was he said, now would be a good time to take a vacation to Hawaii. And I was so livid in the moment and did not say this to him aloud, but I was thinking, well, okay, great. Who's going to pay for this so-called, vacation to Hawaii? Like, we can't pay for it. And then my second thought was if you had gotten to know your patient, if you'd spent just 2 minutes with her, you would know she wants to go to Ireland. Like, that's her dream place to go. But you didn't bother to spend time with her
So there's
and get
that
to know
level
her.
of patient advocacy, regardless of the circumstances of,
Oh, yes.
hey, doctors, wake up. Like I know that
Yes.
there's that you are and to kind of let them off the hook a little bit. They're in these incredibly stressful situations and they have to have other patients and all that other kind of stuff. But it really doesn't take that long to get to know something about someone that you can make a
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, and you have to find the doctor that fits with your family.
Right.
That's what's really, really important. And he was not a good fit with us from day one.
From the
But
get-go.
ultimately, he also just did not have the experience with her type of cancer. Adrienne had a very typical adult cancer. It wasn't a pediatric cancer, which is why ultimately, after arguing with the insurance for 6 weeks, I didn't have insurance on myself, but I had insurance for Adrienne due to a loophole in the California law. So read the details. So we did have insurance, but they fought me for 6 weeks and we finally transferred her to UCLA.
So let's move back to that part of the story. She got transferred to UCLA. Was she in the hospital that whole time? Those 6 weeks? Did she get home at all? How did that progression happen?
She had 4 rounds of chemotherapy at Children's Hospital Los Angeles throughout the summer. And the first and third times, she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. The second and fourth times, it was only for 4 days. So, but they were all of that chemotherapy was inpatient. The first time it was just because we were starting from scratch and it was the very beginning of the journey. And the third time, unfortunately, she had a lot of complications. Just one thing after another happened. We were done with the chemotherapy, but she was couldn't be discharged yet from the hospital. So when we transferred her to UCLA, they were great. They were fantastic. They put together a team. We had someone who saw her cancer every single day. They gave me her lab results without me, demanding them. They faxed them to me. So by the time we got home, they would be sitting in my fax machine. I mean, they were wonderful. And they also really respected her boundaries. We had done these 4 rounds. They really hadn't made a difference. We switched chemotherapy drugs so that she could do it at home. So it was oral chemotherapy, which is much more common these days. And that way she could go back to school because that was one of the things she wanted was to go back to school. So she went back to school at home with me teaching 2 of her subjects. And then I had to fight the school district, my former employer, to get her the services she needed for subjects I couldn't teach. Um, and so she was back in school, and that's what she wanted. So she did school up until about a week before she died. So
And she was, I presume, given how ill she suddenly became, she was very well aware of what was going to happen at this point.
she was aware, I think, by midsummer. There was a real turning point, especially during her fourth round of chemotherapy. Um, I thought it went great. We were in and out. Like it was like 3.5 days. There were no complications. She wasn't in pain. And I thought this was a sign of her getting better. And I was so optimistic. But Adrienne kept a journal, as I mentioned before. She was a writer, and
I've read
she
some
had
of it.
and she started a journal before. She kept been keeping journals since she was 10, but she started an online journal before she started high school in May of 2000. And she continued writing in that journal even after she was diagnosed. And but I had said I would never read that online journal. I had people constantly checking on her, but I wouldn't read her online journal. And so I didn't read it until a few years after she died. And that's when I realized that moment when I thought she was getting better was the moment she knew she felt it in her body that she was getting worse and she was
Oh,
dying. And she didn't tell me. She protected me.
it was protecting you.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, there's so much about this story that is so poignant and so exemplary of the goodness of the human condition, how we want to take care of the people that we love in whatever way that we possibly can, and
Hmm.
everything that I'm sure that you gave her as far as her life, I mean her security, her safe haven, all of those things. And the only thing that she could do for you was not let you know that she knew
Yeah.
that she was not going to get well.
Yeah. Yeah. She didn't let me know. And again, the signs were there. She broke up with her boyfriend. The very last person she allowed to see her was at a barbecue over Labor Day weekend, and it was her best friend. But after that, she wouldn't have anyone come to the house. She was barely taking phone calls from her friends. She was still, still this is back in the instant messenger days, so she was still IMing them and stuff, but she was taking fewer phone calls. She was very focused on her schoolwork. She wasn't dealing, she didn't want anyone her age to see her that frail and weak.
Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to imagine. So you published, first of all, your book, which was
Right.
Better Off Bald,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and well, and she published and you published her journal. So tell me
Yes.
about the books.
Yeah, so I published my book, Better Off Bald, A Life in 147 Days. It's a medical memoir. And because I kept a medical diary while she was sick and she kept a journal, it's told through that lens. So day one is like chapter one. So you go through the 147 days with us of her illness, and then I use flashbacks to fill in the gaps. So it's basically the 7 years of my life when I raised her. But by day three, I started using little excerpts from her journal to introduce the chapters. So you could see the difference between her, the patient, the teenager, and me, the caregiver, the parent, the sister. And then last year, we published Adrienne's journal going back to the year before she was diagnosed up until just weeks before she died. But it's an art journal. So her artwork is in there from a very young age all the way up again until weeks before she died. And her artwork had been hung in three LA galleries, and she'd won awards. And she just, I mean, she'd gone to an art academy for 2 years. So it's really, really incredible, and you really get inside the teenage mind. And all the proceeds of that book, I'd Rather Be Dead Than Deaf, go to Blue Fairy. And the title comes from, and I've gotten pushback on both titles, but um, Better Off Bald, that title came to me. I was leaving a writing workshop and I was in the parking lot and I had been struggling for a title and it just like popped into my head. And it came to me because it wasn't until she was bald that Adrienne looked in the mirror and thought she was beautiful. That
Oh,
was the first time where she was
oh,
like, wow, like yeah, she looked amazing. And then I'd rather be dead than deaf is what she said to the pediatric oncologist when we were about to start the first round of treatment, and one of the drugs causes hearing loss. And it's not a possibility. This drug causes hearing loss. Full stop. It just depends on how much hearing loss. And as a budding musician and as someone who just
um,
loved music, she said no. She said, I'd rather be dead than deaf. And so we came to an agreement with her that if there were any signs of hearing loss, we would stop that drug. And sure enough, after 2 rounds, she took a hearing test. She had the beginning signs of hearing loss, and she said, I'm done. She said, find me and find another drug. She said, my sister has a book of chemotherapy drugs. There were over 200. Pick another one. So, so we did.
I'm I'm so touched by the life force of your sister,
Oh
of
yeah.
wanting that. I'm still alive, so I want to be alive. I don't want to be just a repository for needles and pins and drugs and stuff that's supposed to keep me breathing, but not alive. And for
Yeah.
her to have made that decision at that young age, it really speaks to, first of all, her maturity and her life
Yes.
force. And I have to say, I did start reading the journal, her journal, and it's delightful. I mean, it's just the beginning parts of it are like I'm looking at her talk about her favorite colors and this and that, and I was like, this is just it's so affirming of that life force at the beginning. Again, I haven't reached the hard parts, but
Yes.
to recognize that powerful force existed in her at the worst time and at the end of her life, and then that you took her life force and you made it into Blue Fairy, because that to me is what this speaks of. This is the continuation of her life force.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, she was adamant. She didn't use the word bucket list, but I can look back now and see, oh, that's really what she was doing because she was determined that when her white blood cell counts were up, that we were doing things. So it could be as little as going to a particular restaurant or medieval times. Or, she met her favorite musician, Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction twice. And people think I made that happen. I supported her in those. She made them happen. Like we went to the Tonight Show because she made it happen. And whenever she got checked into the hospital, that's what she would say. She was like, okay, when am I getting out? I've got, people to see, places to go, things to do, and I will get out in time to do these things. And so it was really amazing to watch. And I always tell people she really gave me and everyone a blueprint for how to live because she did not let cancer stop her from living at all.
She really was a wonder, and she was a gift. And this 147 days was from the diagnosis till when she passed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Well, Andrea, I can't tell you how much I'm happy that we had this conversation. It was obviously heavy subject matter, but at the same time so life affirming, especially when you recognize that this life force of this powerful 15-year-old girl still carries on to this day, 24 years later, through you and through your relationship with her. So I'm so happy to have had this opportunity. If you can leave us with one thing, do that, and then tell us more about where we can learn about Blue Fairy and the books.
I'm going to leave you with the second best piece of advice I ever received and at the time didn't appreciate. Treat people the way they want to be treated,
Oh,
not the way you want to be treated. We're always told that golden rule that doesn't work, and that happened time and time again with Adrienne. And a great example was there were no support groups for parents or caregivers at Children's Hospital, but there was a teen support group, and I dragged Adrienne to it against her will. She didn't want to go, and and she ended up having a full meltdown. I mean, just an abs and just ran out of there. And she finally said, "Don't you get it, sissy?" She's like, "I don't want to be around other sick kids. I don't need to be reminded that I'm sick." And she had Denise. She still saw Denise every week. So she did have mental health support. And that's when I went, "Oh my gosh. Like I this was about me. I was desperate to meet other parents, desperate to find support." So treat people the way they want to be treated. It's really, really
I love
important.
that. That is so important. We always think that we're doing the right thing, and that's where that the road to hell was paved with good intentions thing
Yes.
comes from. Yeah, it does. So snap out of it and look at the people that you're trying to serve and make sure you're serving them the way they need to be served.
Yes.
And again, you take that and you created Blue Fairy to treat people the way they need to be treated. So tell us where we can learn more about Blue Fairy and find the books.
Bluefairy.org, Bluefairy. So fairy with an E instead of an I, because that's the way Adrienne liked the spelling. And you can also find her book there. You can find both books on Amazon. So Better Off Bald, A Life in 147 Days, and I'd Rather Be Dead Than Deaf, A Young Woman's Journey with Liver Cancer. And you can learn more about me at AndreaWilsonWoods.com.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This has been a really, as I said, parts of the story are gutting, but at the end, what a life-affirming story. So thank you so much for joining me today. And everybody, please check all of these resources out. You'll find all the links on the show notes when this show does air. And if you need a little more inspiration, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net, sign up for our Brilliance Bit, of which Andrea will be a part when this episode airs. Have a great day, everybody, and we will see you the next time on the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Bye. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Now, before you go, remember this. Resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. If today's episode helped you reset, rise, or see your brilliance a little more clearly, I invite you to take the next step with me. Explore the Brilliantly Resilient resources, including the podcast, books, and the new Brilliantly Resilient mini course series, all designed to meet you exactly where you are. You can learn more and get started at brilliantlyresilient.net. Until next time, stay steady, stay curious, and keep moving forward, one resilient step at a time.